There we go. Ken, how you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. Very excited to talk to you today about all the Trump assassination attempt stuff. I'm very curious to get into this because this was like a lot of the different a lot of the different topics where it's like you remember all the stuff from the news and then you dig into it a little bit and there's like a bunch of extra stuff. But I did want to start off by just letting everyone know I am bringing Ken on because you have a book coming out about the Trump assassination. Is there like a specific date on that yet?
We don't have a specific date. We're pretty much working every day to try to get this done as soon as possible. The second shooter, Ryan Ruth, the guy that was hiding in the bushes down in the Trump's golf course in September, his trial starts this fall. So we're trying to get the book out before that trial starts because if we got to cover that and incorporate all that info, it's going to really complicate and delay things. But it's progress is being made.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, I'm very excited for it to come out because one thing that immediately was apparent is there's a lot of stuff going on with this. There's a lot of like moving parts and it's all very confusing. I don't want to I have a bunch of questions, so I apologize
Yeah.
to you in advance, to the people in advance. This might be a little all over the place, but like I said, when I was doing the research because I wanted to be prepared, I was like, oh shit, there's a lot of stuff here. I guess I'll just hop into it. I wanted to ask you right out of the gate. The thing that you don't really hear him talk about it as much anymore, but when I was like reading through some stuff that came out when it happened and stuff, you kept hearing Iran pop up. And I think that, that became kind of topical again because it's like, every time there's a chance to get people mad at Iran, they find a reason to get people mad at Iran. And the big thing I was like curious about in the context of Iran with the Trump assassination attempt was it something where they had intelligence beforehand that there was anything credible to Iran, or was it one of those things that like after it happened, it was like a bunch of them were like, yeah, we should fucking blame Iran for this, right? Like, so how credible was any of the Iran stuff in context of the Trump assassination attempt?
It's actually a little bit of both. They did have some intelligence, but they also really, I guess, inflate or amplified the threat beyond, what it actually was. But yeah, thanks for the question, because this is actually a chapter in the book that I have a draft of. It's titled "An FBI Iranian Plot Against Trump," and the reason that it's titled that way is because these Iranian plots are pretty much the same thing as what they did in 2020 with the Whitmer plot to kidnap Michigan's governor, the so-called militia plot, where they find out that half of them were undercover informants or undercover agents. So you got a similar thing here, and it does raise some questions whether this was some kind of coordinated thing to blame Iran, because there's a guy named Asif Merchant who was arrested on July 12th, 2024, the day before the Trump shooting happened. And Merchant was arrested when he was trying to leave the country, and he had been orbited by an FBI informant and two undercover FBI agents who were pretending to be hitmen. And they claimed that this Merchant guy tried to hire these FBI agents to take out Trump. And so, like, when you hear Ted Cruz argue with Tucker Carlson and be like, oh, Iran, they were trying to hire hitmen. These hitmen were undercover FBI agents, and Trump was never in danger in the first place. And there's like 3 or 4 other very similar cases like this where they claim that Iran also tried to assassinate John Bolton. The hitman in that case is also an informant. And then there was another case they announced last November where they said these other guys were conspiring to kill Trump. And the weird thing about that case from last November is that the source of that is some guy in Iran who just told the DOJ that. And then they put that in the charging papers. So they have like an informant in Iran. It's all very bizarre. But this guy who was arrested the day before the Trump shooting, he's been in solitary confinement ever since then. So it's been like 367 days in solitary confinement. He hasn't even been able to review his evidence like the recordings of the undercover FBI agents who he supposedly tried to hire. All that stuff is classified. This is even more locked down than the Whitmer case because there's overseas connections. So they're not even letting him see the evidence. This is a long-winded answer to just tell you it's total FBI entrapment nonsense.
Okay, and is how do I say this politely? Is it on par with the usual FBI situation? Is the guy mentally deficient, or
He doesn't seem totally mentally deficient. Like he was in his, I think, 30s or 40s.
yeah?
He had a professional career. He's actually a Pakistani guy who apparently had some family in Iran. Like it's really tenuous. We just don't know the full picture because they issued a criminal complaint, but we don't have any evidence about what the FBI informants, were saying to this guy.
Okay, and I apologize. I missed what you said earlier. This guy got scooped up right like the day before the assassination attempt?
Yeah, so it's July 12th, he's arrested, and then the FBI or the DOJ doesn't unseal the criminal complaint until August. And when they unsealed the criminal complaint like a month later, that's when all the Republicans jumped on it and be like, oh, this can't be a coincidence. This is the day before, has to be connected. There is no connection. This is a total controlled FBI sting job. If we're going to steelman the case for why this matters, we can say that, well, why wasn't Trump better protected when the intelligence agencies had this information about some kind of plot to kill Trump from long range? Then why was the security at Butler so bad? But there's no direct connection.
Yeah. That's a good segue. One of the big things I was getting obsessed with going through this, because I remember I was reading it, they were saying this was I want to say it was the biggest secret security service blunder of all time. At least definitely top 5. But that was like a big thing. I don't know where we could start on that, but like that, how did they fuck up so bad? And was there anything in it? And this kind of like, I'm throwing a little chum to conspiracy people because I am one of them. But was there anything in the mix that would suggest, they let this happen?
I mean, I'm not there. That's not my official position that they let this happen, but I understand why people would think that. And I'm definitely not ruling that out altogether. The biggest thing that I've been hammering for almost like 10 months now, ever since the information came out, is the Secret Service did literally nothing that day. I mean, nothing. They did not save Trump at all. And this is something that even conservative media gets wrong. The New York Times reports that, it was the Secret Service sniper who finally killed crooks on the rooftop and, quote, neutralized the threat. Now, that's not true at all. It was actually a local cop from the ground who shot crooks. So if you go back to that video, or the video, there's a lot of videos, but you'll hear 10 shots. There's 8 shots in the first 5 seconds from the kid. It's pop, 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 pop. And then the 9th shot immediately after that is the local cop. So you got 9 shots in the first 6 seconds. Now there's another entire 10 seconds pass, and then the Secret Service sniper with his high-powered rifle just blows Crooks's head off. Like just the final kill shot in one side, out the other, back into the shoulder, the bullet fragments, and then there's 2 re-exit wounds. I think it was like a high-powered 300 Winchester. Like I don't really know the calibers very well, but
yeah.
And so now everybody's like, oh, well, at least the Secret Service, the sniper at least was a hero. Well, like, no, the local cop, his name is Aaron Zalaponi. That guy's the real badass hero. He's the one that actually saved Trump, and God knows how many other lives, because you got to imagine that Crooks probably had 30 shots in his magazine. And if he got 8 shots off in 5 seconds, he conceivably could have gotten off like another 20 shots before that Secret Service sniper finally got his act together.
Yeah, because well, I know he was there. Was there evidence that he was a good shot or not? I can't remember. I know he got like kicked out of the gun club in high school or something, but was there any evidence to say that he was eventually became a better shot or something like that?
So the gun club thing is actually disinfo. It was
Oh,
one of his high school classmates said that, but he's had a lot of high school classmates that have said a lot of things. Some have panned out, some haven't. And yeah, this guy said, he was actually dangerous. They wouldn't let him on the high school rifle team. And the high school issued an official statement saying, we have no records of him ever trying out for the rifle team. The coach doesn't remember him. I actually don't believe that's true. I think his classmate probably made it up. He did visit the gun range maybe 40 or 50 times in the last year of his life. So he did get interested in firearms and explosives, it seems like, increasingly after he graduated high school. It was about a 120-yard shot, and everybody says, like, oh, how could you miss? Like, I've shot an AR at a gun range, and, I could hit the bullseye from 120 yards with iron sights. So, this is a pretty bad mess up. But you got to remember that he's on the roof. And again, the local cops are actually chasing him. A Butler Township police officer tries to climb the roof. He looks up and Crooks sees him. Crooks turns the AR and points it at the local cop. And then the local cop drops back on the ground. And then it's like 5 seconds later that Crooks starts shooting. So, put your mind in the shooter. You see a cop, like, oh shit, I better go. You get your aim 120 yards. He doesn't have any magnification. He had a red dot sight. But Trump probably looks about an inch tall from the rooftop. So it's actually a really good shot. And then he gets the one that's close. And after that, I think he just starts spraying crazily.
starts going nuts.
Yeah, if you would have aimed for the body, he probably would have hit it. And it was still a pretty good shot.
Okay. So he's actually probably a pretty decent shot. Interesting. Um, so is there talking about how the gun club was some disinfo and stuff? Is there a good because I think is there a good sense of like like what this kid was like? Because I know you went to Butler and talked to some people, and then I saw a couple interviews and stuff, and I kept getting conflicted things where it was like, oh, he was a fun little nerdy guy that got bullied and da da da, and then I heard other stuff where it was like, yeah, he didn't seem like a problem, but he didn't really talk to people. Were you able to get a sense of like what his vibe was?
Yeah, that's still probably the biggest unanswered question is just who was this kid? What was he into? All the public information we have points to him being just a mild mannered, extremely smart, probably had like a 140, 150 IQ, engineering student, real quiet, but he wasn't like the outcast. He wasn't bullied every day. He had small little group of friends. He wasn't the prom king, but he wasn't also, the black sheep. Um, Graduates high school with honors, goes to a 2-year technical school. All his professors there said he was like the smartest kid. His mother was like legally blind, and he actually, for one project, he made a 3D he printed with a 3D printer a braille chessboard that's like all labeled so blind people could play chess. Like really thought, like kind of like you'd want your son to turn out like this kid.
Yeah.
And even up like the last email he sent with his college account, which I obtained, he is asking about the status of his diploma because he's supposed to go to Robert Morris University in the fall of 24, like a month after he died. He was supposed to go for a 4-year engineering degree. So this is all the public information that we have that really paints one picture. However, we also know that he was a gamer and he had a bunch of accounts on like Discord, Steam, all these platforms that are known to kind of be cesspools for this violent, extremist is kind of a gay word, but really when they're talking about mass shootings, like idolizing the Columbine kids, like these kind of chat rooms. And that's where I think where the real story is probably told. I think he was probably groomed or radicalized on one of these social media accounts. And that's what we don't have any information on that.
Okay. And is that like has there have they shown if what am I trying to ask? Like if feds hop in there to like groom these kids and stuff like that? Not saying it necessarily happened for him, but is that like a area where feds have been taken advantage of to groom kids?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And that's my operating theory. Again, I don't have any conclusions still about what happened in Butler or what happened leading up to Butler, despite the fact that I've been studying this every day since it happened.
Yeah.
But it's my theory because there is a long history of teenagers, young kids getting groomed by undercover informants to commit violence. The most Probably the most notorious example of this is the 2022 Buffalo shooting, where Peyton Gendron went to a top supermarket in Buffalo, New York, and killed like 11 black people. And then after that, it turns out he was talking about the great replacement theory, and you had all this outcry like, oh, was he radicalized by Tucker Carlson? Why is he talking about the great replacement theory?
Yeah.
Well, the far more interesting story there is it turns out that he had been chatting on Discord with a quote undercover or no, a quote retired federal agent 20 minutes before the shooting. He put out like a link.
Jesus.
Yeah, he put out a link in a Discord chat saying, if you want me to live stream me shooting up this market, check it out, guys. One of the people that clicked on this link was a retired federal agent. The Buffalo News reported this like a couple months later, and the FBI has been totally stonewalling the public on that too. That's like another scandal that nobody even knows about. There's like 5 or 6 other similar type cases that I could get into, but I think that hopefully satisfies your question that yes, there is a pattern of gamers being targeted, groomed, and radicalized online by bad actors, including, glowies.
Yeah, that's crazy. I forget, I saw something about his social media, but then there was like some debate about it. What was did he have social media or anything like that?
Yeah, so and this is all the stuff the FBI's kept totally locked down, and they've only like trickled out these little drabs of information to kind of confuse people. I think this is what you're getting at. During a congressional hearing last August, like the deputy FBI director said, well, hey, we found some accounts where he's talking against immigrants, against this and that, right-wing rhetoric, but he admits that they didn't actually confirm that this was Crooks's account, and they haven't released any more information on that, since then. And that also sparked the CEO of Gab to release his own letter from the FBI that was requesting information about an account that was potentially linked to Crooks. And that account was spewing a lot of anti-Trump rhetoric. So you've got like the two sides being like, no, he's a Democrat. No, he's a Republican. We just still don't know. All this stuff needs to be released. The most interesting thing that came out on the 1-year anniversary is that CBS published a story about Crooks's life. And they did reveal that he did have a Twitter, a TikTok, and conventional social media accounts. And that's brand new information. And I got to imagine that the FBI leaked this information to CBS because the reporter is Scott McFarlane. He was like a DOJ stenographer. He did a bunch of their stuff about January 6th. So it really seems like Trump's FBI is leaking to like a Mockingbird outlet, which is, disturbing. Like, I thought this is going to change and we're going to have total transparency. It's pretty disappointing.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's because I remember seeing something where, it is weird how they're like releasing all the information, because didn't they do something where they were like, oh, we have a bunch of his emails, and then they just released like one, and then they're like, we'll give you a couple later. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
This is weird.
I actually did a story on that where CBS obtained his college emails, and I actually got the whole batch of emails because these are all public records from the community college. And all these emails, they don't show much because Crooks, you're using your college email. You're not going to be talking about illegal stuff, presumably. And so, all that paints one picture. What we need are his private emails, his encrypted chat apps, the Discord chat rooms, all that stuff is what we need to really know what this kid was about.
Okay, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, because it does seem like he was a very private person, and there wasn't a lot of like public stuff on him. Like, because I would always, it would always make me laugh because I would see your tweets very occasionally. You're like, oh, look, a small video of this kid where, you know, you have all these kids nowadays that are just even like the ones that aren't locked in on TikTok, but you said he had a TikTok, but you see like every kid nowadays is like they're posting a little bit every so often. So the fact that there was nothing is odd. I going back to humoring conspiracy theories because that's my favorite thing to do. Was there? I remember the big thing was Crooks is in a BlackRock commercial. Was there anything there, or was that just like a weird coincidence?
He wasn't in a BlackRock commercial, as far as we could tell. It was just a weird coincidence. Yeah, I have no idea why that happened. Senator Josh Hawley wrote a letter to BlackRock demanding answers, and we never heard anything about that. So I don't know if that's really significant or just a coincidence.
Oh, okay. So I was hearing you. I think it was on Jose's podcast. Shout out Jose, no way Jose. And it was around the time when you were like driving to Butler, getting some subpoenas. And I remember you were saying there was a bunch of weird stuff with Crooks's autopsy, where, because I know you were talking about, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, they say he got shot once, but he actually got shot like 5 times. And then they didn't do a certain amount. They didn't do the amount of tests they would always do. And then they cremated him right away. Can you go over the autopsy and the weird things about it, and maybe if there's any updates now a year later?
Sure. Yeah. So it was a month-long legal battle for me to get that autopsy, and quite the education in how public records systems work. Basically the story is that the body, Crooks, was left on the rooftop until 6 a.m. the next day, and then they ship him not to the Butler County coroner's office, but to Allegheny County in Pittsburgh. And we've got 2 conflicting reasons for why that was. The Butler County coroner at one point said that, well, Allegheny County, that's where Pittsburgh is. They have more advanced facilities. And at another point, though, he said they shipped the firefighter's body there to avoid media publicity because they were worried that reporters would be waiting outside the Butler County office. So the interesting there, and I'll get to the full autopsy, but just a little tidbit since you're a conspiracy guy. The medical examiner in Allegheny County who conducted the autopsy on Crooks is a guy named Ariel Goldschmidt, who's a dual citizen of Israel. And oddly enough, Goldschmidt went to Israel after October 7th, and he was doing autopsies of the people who were killed in the massacres. And he was working with another doctor who made up all these fake stories about beheaded babies. So this like IDF asset from Israel who does that, then he winds up doing the Crooks autopsy, which is very bizarre. And I think, we got to ask questions because they did cremate the body, and the medical examiner says he was only shot once. It was definitely by the Secret Service. The Secret Service killed him. The medical examiner says that local cop who took the 9th shot didn't even hit him. But are you going to believe the local cop, or are you going to believe a literal IDF fed? So that's one thing. The other thing is he did release the body for cremation, and the body still had bullet fragments in it. So we don't know for sure how many times he was shot or who shot him. This is still a big mystery. And then if we're going to get more conspiratorial, they did a toxicology exam and found out that he wasn't on drugs of abuse like meth or fentanyl, but they didn't test for psychotropics. So I think that's the big thing that everybody wants to know for every mass shooter. Like, was he on SSRIs? We'll never know any of that because this IDF guy released the body for cremation.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's all very interesting whenever you see like that pop up, and you're like, "Come on, man, not again."
Well, and to add to that, just since we're on this subject, they used Israeli spyware to hack his phone because their initial reports, oh, he's got these encrypted apps that we
Yeah.
can't access. They used Celebrite, and supposedly they couldn't get into the phone at first, so they had to call Celebrite and get the most advanced version of this Israeli spyware to finally get into his Samsung and access these social media accounts that we still don't know. So yeah, not to get too tinfoil hat, but Israel has been handling all this evidence
That's weird.
and trying to blame Iran.
Mm-hmm. That is kind of, yeah. I didn't even think about. I didn't know there would. Of course, there's an Israel connection. Why wouldn't there be? I didn't even know about that. And it's like that. The irony of them being like, "Yo, I think Iran did this," and it's like,
I know.
wait. It's like, wait, who's working on the case? it's akin to never mind. I forget the guy's name. But anyway, okay. What else was I gonna ask? Oh yeah. The something I didn't fucking realize was even a part of this until I was doing a bunch of reading over the weekend to prepare for this. So he had like bombs in his car.
Yes, that's correct. They've supposedly they found a detonator in his pocket up on the roof, and then they had to like evacuate the area, which is another really sketchy thing because it turns out there weren't any bombs around the building. But the official story is they finally they trace the rifle back to the dad, and then they do some facial recognition. They think it's Thomas Crooks. They go to the house at like 10 o'clock that night, and an ATF agent talks about going down the hallway, going into Thomas's room, looking at the foot of the bed and seeing this giant canister of racing fuel. And I think an empty 50 caliber ammo case, which those kind of cases are used to make IEDs. So they freak out. The ATF and other people find more bombs in his car back at Butler Farm Show, which is like 45 minutes away. And the bombs weren't operable. Apparently, they were over-engineered, and even the switches were turned off. So even though he had a remote detonator in his pocket, it doesn't seem like this was any part of his assassination plot because the bombs weren't even armed to detonate. So yeah, it's really bizarre. And this is like the only interesting email from his college account. In January 24, he did email a company called Hyperfuels asking on the status of an order of nitromethane that he wanted shipped to his house. And then the company did, reply later that day saying your order's on the way. And again, I guess it is a side. Nitromethane is used to make ANFO bombs, which are the same bombs that were used in OKC. So it's all very interesting, but we don't know what it means really.
Yeah. Okay. So he had. That is interesting. Is that consistent with like you were saying he had the bombs and they were like switched in the off position? Was it just that they were turned off or they wouldn't have been able to go off?
I think both. They weren't triggered to be detonated remotely, and the FBI said the bombs were quote over-engineered, which is interesting because like when you hear about the kid making bombs, that's one of the biggest signs that there were others involved.
Yeah.
But again, he is a high IQ engineering student, so it's possible that he was just tinkering around on his own.
Yeah, and that was it's funny. I'm reading. I just started Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, I believe it's called, the
Nice.
Timothy McVeigh. Yeah, I just started that. So, and I know you know a whole bunch about OKC. Is there any John Doe #2 action going on over here?
Oh yeah, there's the case of the mystery van, which was parked maybe a couple hundred yards away from Crooks's house. And are
Okay.
you familiar with the van at all or this story?
I was listening to you on Jose's podcast, and I remember you said something about a van, and I was in the middle of doing stuff, so I'm aware of it. I don't really know much about it.
Okay, this is a big one that I'm still very focused on.
Okay.
Yeah, there were all these reports, and there was even, I think, a Fox News reporter was standing in front of the van that night saying, oh, the bomb squad is searching this van, and they believe that the van belonged to the shooter, and then it just disappears. You never hear about it again. And so we know a bomb squad was searching a van that night. We know it was really close to the farm show. And so I filed a records request with it with the Pennsylvania State Police, and they responded to me that yes, we have records on this van, but we're not going to give them to you because it's part of our investigation. So to me, that says they did investigate it. What they found, we don't know, but I think it does. I think there's something there to, quote Bongino.
Yeah. Well, no, that's all very interesting because I was having trouble. I got really obsessed with the timeline of like Crooks getting there, and then like I think the first text message about him being like, "Yo, I think there's a weirdo over there," was at like 4:30, and then Trump doesn't get shot until 6:11. So it's like they know, like they're, and then there was like a second text message, and there was some more conversation and stuff. So it's like they're aware of this guy. And then on top of that, he comes to the place, sets up, leaves to get more ammo, comes back. Like, I don't know, man. It just it befuddles me that this even got to where it got. Like, was it some like chain of command thing? Was it like, yo, I got the shot, or I like this dude's weird, and it's like people being like, don't worry about it, go over here? Because there was also reports of there was like a bunch of people throughout the rally that that the feds or the security interacted with for suspicious reasons. And now you have a guy walking around on top of the building. He's flying a drone for 11 minutes, and they'll like, we'll wait and see on him. It's all very weird. I don't even know if there was a question in there.
No, it's extremely weird. And the official story is that the reason there were so many breakdowns is because the feds had their own communication center, and then the locals had their separate post. And outside of the actual rally site was the locals' jurisdiction, even though the Secret Service should have been handling it all. The locals were chasing the kid and talking on their radios, but the Secret Service isn't looped in on that, which is like a major failure. And this is what Congress has kind of done some good work on because it's not really controversial. Like, this is an obviously mess up. Usually they don't even do that. It's almost always one unified command post. And so, yeah, the head of the local command center says that, while all this is going on, as you say, they see him like an hour before the shooting. He's calling on his cell phone, Pennsylvania State Police Sergeant, who's in the federal command post. And so the Pennsylvania police guy would take a cell phone call and then tell the feds what's going on. Like, oh, there's a guy outside that's suspicious. He has a rangefinder. Now he's on the roof. And the federal command center leader says that he didn't get a lot of this information. No, the PSP guy was not telling me this. It's not my fault. Don't blame me. And there's a lot of he said, she said about why there was so many failures. I do think it's a little bit more complicated and possibly even nefarious than that. Because you've got instances where like there's like the Secret Service counter sniper response agent. And this is like a guy who's supposed to be the gopher for the snipers, where the snipers say, hey, go check something out. And this agent on the ground like runs and gives the snipers intel, live intel. Well, that guy tried to go look for Crooks, and another agent at like a fence line turned him back in and said, go back to the stage, like blocked him from going to look for Crooks. Really bizarre stuff we don't have an explanation on. The last thing I'll say about your point to them first picturing Crooks at 4:30, and that's exactly that time is exactly right, but there's something really weird going on there. The local cops initially released this picture and said, hey, we first saw Crooks at 4:30. Or sorry, they didn't release a picture, but they did say we first saw him at 4:30, and then we reported him, and the ball got rolling from there. However, after the local cops said this, like a couple weeks later, a video emerges of Crooks walking on the farm show on the opposite side of the site. So who did those local cops see outside the AGR building at 4:30? It wasn't Crooks. It was because Crooks was a half mile away walking around by the vendors. So some people think the locals were trying to create some kind of alibi, like, oh, look, we were trying to monitor him. Or I think it's more likely that Crooks had a lot of lookalikes and maybe there were others involved and a lot of people were dressed the same to confuse the locals. But these are just theories, but we must
Yeah.
ask these questions because it's an anomaly that needs an explanation.
Yeah, that's crazy. So like there was okay, so they were reporting that there were people dressed just like crooks. That's crazy. That's a damn. So a big thing with because like I was saying before, I really got obsessed with like the intense level of like security fuck up was Crooks. Because like I said before, he where did he do they know where he posted up and how he got to the area without getting noticed? Was the area he was posted up at outside of their perimeter? I remember reading something about that. Is that why they never noticed him?
That's why the Secret Service supposedly wasn't involved. They had this tiny little area, maybe a couple square acres, where where their responsibility was. And that was like, if to get into that area, you had to pass through a metal detector. And so that area really shouldn't be a concern at all because everybody in there is disarmed, like nobody has a gun. And then, yes, actually, AOC of all people made the good point. Like an AR-15 has a range of like 400 yards. The roof was 100 yards away. How is that not in the perimeter? And
Yeah.
the Secret Service doesn't really have a good explanation for that. They just say the locals were supposed to handle that area outside of the secure site. And oops, we're not going to do that again with those darn locals. Like it just seems almost like built-in failures.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So okay. Cause that's what I was gonna ask, because that kind of goes to what I was gonna ask, where it was like, was it just did because you did say Crooks was very intelligent. Was it was he able to do what he, or I guess you don't know this, you couldn't know this for sure, but based off of what you know, do you think Crooks was able to do what he did because of his like higher level of intelligence, or was he able to do that just because it's like, they made the perimeter too small and just decided on that day to just suck the most ass?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's probably a little bit of both. The most sophisticated technique that Crooks employed was at 3:51 when as you mentioned, he shows up that morning, goes back to the Pittsburgh area, and then returns around 3:50, and he gets out of his car and flies a drone over the farm show. And with that, he might have been able to see, well, hey, there's a sniper here, there's a sniper here. If I locate on this roof, I'm going to be kind of obscured by the trees, so the snipers can't see me very easily. This is all a possibility, but the drone flying raises another question. Another just bizarre coincidence is that the Secret Service had a drone detection monitor, and it wasn't working. The counter drone agent was supposedly troubleshooting it all morning, and then he fixes it at like 4:20, which is like 10 minutes after Crooks flew his drone. And so that's just like another crazy, crazy coincidence. And he claims it was just a problem with the Ethernet cable. He had to switch out the cables. And it's like, I've never
Yeah.
had a faulty Ethernet cable. I've never heard of such a thing. Yeah, just
Yeah.
another unexplained coincidence.
Well, it's like everything. Yeah, it is funny. A lot of the explanations I see with like the Secret Service, they're just like, "Oh, no," they're almost just treating themselves like they hired a shit ton of Mr. Magoo's or something. And I know the thing to say at the time, because it was a lady in charge. Everyone's calling her like a DEI hire. it reminds me of like Colin Kaepernick, because I'm not a fucking I'm not a like a I'm not a, I like football, but I don't pay attention like that. So it's like depending where you are politically, he's either the best football player or the worst football player, and that was the same vibe I got with like this lady working for. Was it a DEI hire situation, or was she actually? Was it just a bad day, or was she terrible?
I don't blame DEI. I think the director, that Kimberly Cheetah lady, is like a ruthless bitch. I think she's ice cold competent. Like she worked on Dick Cheney's detail during 9/11. I think she's very read in. I don't think it's DEI at all. The DEI issue comes to play is the lady who was in charge of making the plan. Mio Perez, some like spicy Latina, and there's rumors that she is kind of messing around with some of the agents. And she's the one that made the crappy perimeter, did a lot of the planning failures, but I think she was set up to fail. I don't focus on the plan as much as I focus on the day of, because despite that rooftop being right there, the Secret Service counter snipers still had a clear view of it. Like they still should have seen Crooks. All the mistakes, not all of them, most of them on the day of were made by highly trained and experienced men. We've got the 4 counter snipers on those barns behind Trump, didn't do anything. They got their response agent, didn't do anything. The head of the command center, who didn't relay any of this information, he's the special agent in charge of Buffalo, which raises more crazy questions about why it is the top agent in Western New York, who has a whole jurisdiction to run. Why is he running the command center as just like a boot on the ground on a random Saturday Trump rally? Like the senior guy doesn't make sense at all. And he messed up a lot. So yeah, these are all highly trained men that made the key mistakes on the day of.
Interesting. Was there speaking of that, was the were there snipers pointed in his direction the whole time? Because I read something saying like some of the dudes that took him out, they repositioned and then take him out. I could be wrong about that, but like, were there snipers pointed at him when he was shooting?
That's what the cameras indicate, that yes, it was like before the shooting starts, you see the snipers reposition themselves, and they're looking through binoculars, and they're definitely they're aware of somebody on the roof, because they got that through their radios. They testify that yes, we were informed, which makes it inexplicable that they waited 15 seconds to return fire. The ones on the northern barn had trees blocking them, their view of Crooks. It's the 2 snipers on the southern barn that had a clearer view of Crooks.
Okay. And then I got 2 more, and then I'll let you go because I know you got some other stuff to do today. And this is you answered pretty much all my questions. Hell yeah. I know. Okay, we talked about it before. He had a drone. He was flying around for like 11 minutes or something before they noticed him, like you said. Do they have like, was he recording drone? Do they have like the drone footage of that?
They say he wasn't recording, but they did recreate the exact flight path. So apparently the FBI has this data of exactly, where, the drone zigzagging above the farm. They know exactly what Crooks saw. When they downloaded the photos, they only saw some old videos from like months prior, though, and we don't know what those are.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, there was some that always stuck out to me. It's like, oh yeah, just 11 minutes. There's just flying a drone around and all that. Last thing I wanted to ask you is sort of just a broad question, because you know way more about this than most people. Is there an element of this story that you're like, kind of like how you brought up the van, how no one's talking about the van and stuff like that? Is there any other element of this story that's like, why is no one talking about this? Is that you could think of?
The thing that's really annoyed me is the fact that the Secret Service snipers took 15 seconds to shoot back, and like nobody is pointing this out. Nobody's giving Aaron Zalaponi his due that like this badass local cop from the ground hit Crooks. Like that's just so awesome. And Trump's such a scumbag for not recognizing that guy. But I've talked about that quite enough, I'd say. The biggest weird mystery that I think more people should be talking about is this ATF agent who, for some reason, was there, even though nobody knows who he was or what he was doing. All the the ATF is never involved in presidential rally security, uh, but we have this mystery agent. And if you read the transcripts of Secret Service agents, there's one lady who's walking behind. This is like 5 p.m., super hot, like 95 degrees at the time. All these Trump supporters are leaning against like the bike racks that they use as rails, entrance rails. And some guy says like, "Oh, I'm worried that those bike racks are going to fall over because all the people leaning against them." And the Secret Service agent says like, "Well, who are you anyways?" And the person identified himself as ATF. And then the agent's like, "Oh, I didn't ask for his credentials or anything, but that was weird." And then once this gets out, like last September, the ATF says, well, he was there in his personal capacity. But he was behind the scenes. He was part of the security. Secret Service has no idea who he was. And I just got some text messages leaked from local police where they identify him. His possibly name is Robert McGlennon is the agent's name. And if you look him up on LinkedIn, he's like a former Department of Energy employee who worked on nuclear security issues. He's got like a Q clearance. Like nobody goes from DOE working on high level nuclear issues to the ATF just to like make gun busts. It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
And the ATF is totally stonewalled Congress, won't produce him for interviews. And yeah, what was the ATF doing there on that day? And yeah, who is this guy? What is he doing? Like, why was he there?
Do they know where, not like trying to dox him or anything, do they know where he lives? I'm just curious if it was like, if he had to take like a crazy drive to get to Butler, or was it just kind of in his neighborhood?
His LinkedIn says he's a Pittsburgh agent, so it isn't.
Yeah, that's not crazy then. Especially if you're, a fan of Trump going to a Trump rally. That's, it's a long drive, but it's not insane, I guess.
Yeah, but he wasn't there. He wasn't part of the rally. He was behind the scenes.
Oh, you're right.
As part of the security. And then the ATF says he was there in his personal capacity, but it really seems like he was there on some kind of official capacity. We just don't know what.
Yeah, well, maybe just because his boys were there, they let him backstage. Who knows?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, but hey, man, this was great. Thank you so much. When did you say you're hopefully gonna get the book out?
Well, we're aiming for hopefully September or October, I think.
Okay, awesome. Is that gonna be through the Libertarian Institute?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yes, Scott Horton's generously agreed to publish the book, and yeah, super excited. It's going to be a good book. There's a couple other Butler books that don't even come close to the level of content that we're going to be releasing.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very, very, very excited to check that out. So yeah, man, thank you very much for coming on, Ken. Have a great day.
Yeah, anytime. You too. Take care.
Have a good one, brother.